Welcome back to Chasing Hazel's Tales, a family history podcast. And so here we are, 2023, and we are telling tales. And I haven't forgotten about my tea. I don't start a good conversation without a good cup of tea.
And today is a good day for a cup of tea.
Mm-hmm. It is storming in Maine. We don't call it storming. We call it storming. It's storming in Maine. We have some snow, and I think Laura's is a little bit different.
I've got something, I'm not sure what it is. I think it's sleet, but I'm just kind of looking out the window. We don't have to go anywhere today. So
that's right. Let's call it just nasty.
Yeah, it's just a yucky day, and I just hope we keep power. That's all. Right.
So basically, if we have a nice, smooth podcast, that means the power stayed on. If it's a little bit quirky, that means CMP's got problems and we don't have power.
That's right.
You know, so in future, we can always just blame it on the power.
Now anyway, we've laid that groundwork. So yeah, we're good.
So from here in Maine, I'm Kim McLaughlin.
And I'm Laura Ireland. And you know, one of our favorite things to talk about is that show Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr. So did you watch that first episode of the season?
Of course I did.
It was a dumb question. Yeah. The one with Julia Roberts. So I just wanted to bring up, you know, she had a big surprise from her DNA results, and that was that she's not actually a Roberts. And her NPE, or not parent expected, was a few generations back. This was her great grandfather who was not who they thought he was. So she seemed pretty surprised by this, and all I have to say is, same girl. we had a very similar experience. So if you ever want to talk about it, we're here for you. And
we can help. I know we can help.
That's right. We can help to process this kind of thing. And also we have so much in common, because the name of our grandmother, Hazel, is the name of Julia's daughter. Just throwing that out there.
That's right.
So
we're available.
So if you're ever in Maine, Julia, you hit us up. We'd love to meet with you.
We know some places we could go.
That's right. We'll make you a cup of tea and we can talk.
Bring the fam.
That's right. All right. So, you know, just reminding everyone, as we said, Hazel is our grandmother that we never met, and her short life is now much clearer to us after learning all the things we did through DNA and going through all of Uncle Carl's stuff, and honestly doing this podcast, kind of organizing all of our thoughts and looking through more and understanding. So considering that we knew nothing in the beginning, you know, I consider this a big win for us. We've learned a lot.
We're doing good. And I could say we know a lot about her now.
That's true. And every week here we say, we will let you know if there's anything new. So this week we are excited to say that there is going to be something new. This week we're going to be heading to meet up with some folks that knew the family way back when. We have a listener in her 90s who knew our grandmother and knew our aunt, and they want to meet up and talk with us so that they can tell us some tales. So, you know, fingers crossed, this is going to be a great meeting.
Right. Well, I can't wait. I need to like draw a chart for where they fall. They have relatives and everything there too, and I want to figure it out. So we'll be prepared when we show up.
That's right. We have questions.
That's right. We're gonna prep our questions and we're gonna get down to it.
And I'm just gonna be so happy to hear what she knows.
Right.
What they know.
Right. And talk about her life too. She has a very interesting life as well.
Oh, I'm sure.
So,
yep.
Yeah. It's gonna be a rich weekend.
Yes.
Even though we didn't win Mega Millions. Somebody in Maine won Mega Millions. It wasn't us. Here we are.
Honestly, though, they're barely in Maine. It was Lebanon, Maine, which is right on the New Hampshire border.
Could have been someone from New Hampshire skipping across.
It could have been.
So, but anyway, it happened in Maine.
And it wasn't us. Yep.
That's right. Also, I want to say we have a listener in Maine that's pretty sure that he could come to any one of our dinners and keep up with all this conversation because he's been pretty loyal to listening. And if anybody could do that, that's an accomplishment. So we want to make a shout out to David, and kudos to you. So,
and maybe we will invite him.
Yeah, you never know. So now we're going to kind of talk about Salvatore. We're on to a different little story right now. Salvatore Nicolai and his life. So he started, of course, in Monte Fiascone, Italy, And he was born on April 18th, 1895. And I may have neglected to say that last week, just that he was from Italy, but it's Montefiascone, Italy. And he was the son of Domenico, Nicolai, and Lucrezia Scorzino. They had 5 other children, 3 sons and 2 daughters. And Scorzino, over all the different documents I've seen, is pronounced and spelled different ways, but Scorzino is what was listed on Salvatore's birth certificate. So I'm going with that. That's the source of that spelling. So I don't know. It could be different, but not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And last week we went over Salvatore coming to the United States in 1912, and that there was a lot happening in Italy in the early 1900s. As we mentioned, many natural disasters in the forms of earthquakes in the south, Montefiascone. I drank some Italian wine last night, so I'm feeling so Italian. It's located about 60 miles north of Rome. So it's probably in the middle, really neither north or south. And there's family lore that mentions he came to the U.S. as his family was worried about war on the horizon. He wasn't married and was encouraged to head west to the United States. So they weren't wrong. It wasn't long after he left that war broke out pretty close by. So they saw that writing on the wall, and World War I came along. Wasn't it 1918?
Yeah,
started real close there, right in the Balkans. And the town ended up being damaged by the town of Montefiascone was damaged by a couple of Allied bombs in May of 1944. So I'm sure that was all very difficult for the family that remained.
Right. Very fearful.
Apparently, the town is amazing. And, people should go visit if they can, or check it out online. But if you can go and visit and enjoy some really good food, great wine, and some awesome people.
Yep. I can attest to that. It was a great place to be.
That's right. So last week we talked about how he came to the U.S. and began his life here, seemingly heading toward the American dream. He was working in the trades, applied for naturalization, and he found a young woman that would become his wife, Ruth Elizabeth Broad. And they were married in 1923.
Right. So, and here's last week we mentioned Salvatore and Ruth had 4 children from 1924 to 1927. And Laura made a note, well, geez, that's 1 per year. And I thought, darn tootin', it didn't really settle on me, but I thought, oh yeah, that's 1 per year. That's 4 children under the age of 4 in 4 years, after 4 years. So that's a busy little household. And the young the young family lived at 161 Coney Street, East Walpole, Massachusetts. And I said last week that they lived in Norwood, which is one place where they had lived, I think, as well. So, and they are right side by side, but they settled in East Walpole in a small little family home. And basically, if you're headed to Gillette Stadium, you drive right by. It's just
I'll be going this summer.
Yeah,
I have concert tickets.
All right. So if you're going to Gillette Stadium, you go right by, and it's just south of Boston, but it's not Southie. I want to make sure it's not, that would require a totally different accent. So,
yes, yeah.
One that I cannot reproduce.
Yeah. And if anybody doesn't know about Southie, it's a heavily Irish area of south of Boston.
Very much so. Yeah. Very much so. Yes.
Yeah. So while this was going on in the US, around 1923 in Italy, Salvatore's youngest brother, Consalvo, just 17 or 18, was also emigrating to a foreign land. But this brother didn't go to the US. He went to Argentina. When I inquired as to the reason he didn't join his brother in the US, it is said that his mother hadn't heard from Salvatore in a long time and worried what happened to him. So it was decided that Consalvo would go to Argentina with his cousin, Jose Burla. Jose's mother was a Nicolai, and she was the sister of Salvatore's father, Domenico. So at least the 2 of them had each other to navigate Argentine life. So out of the 6 children, 2 sons had emigrated to new homes, and the last remained in Italy at that time. We'll get back to Consalvo later. He's pretty important to our story too.
Yes. One thought when I first was looking into this, I thought Consalvo, he was years later coming or emigrating since Salvatore. And so I thought maybe he couldn't get in because of
like quotas or something.
Right, quotas. They had topped out on their quotas for Italians, and they had pretty strict quotas. And if you're coming across that ocean and your boat has too many, you get shipped out to somewhere else, and they just take those people either home or to or back or to another country, probably Argentina. So that was one thing I thought about, but it turns out that Salvatore's mother was worried because she hadn't heard from Salvatore in a long time. So she didn't want to send Consalvo the same way. So she sent him to Argentina with her cousin. Anyway, that's just kind of weird. Like, and I'm not so sure it's not a combination of both those things. But anyway,
right.
Salvatore went one way, Consalvo went another. So life was just beginning for this family of 6 when an unfortunate illness struck Salvatore. He contracted bronchial pneumonia in May of 1928 when his youngest daughter was just 8 months old. He later had surgery on May 21st, and on June 10th, 1928 at 11:45 p.m., Salvatore passed away from empyema of the lungs. The death certificate said he contracted the disease at home, and empyema is defined by purulent fluid collection in the pleural space, which is most commonly caused by pneumonia. And I've seen modern versions of surgery to treat this, and it's just problematic all the way around. Of course, it's your lungs.
And even today, it makes a person very, very sick.
Very sick. Like it's like the modern version is still like problematic, and it's not a quick and easy cure. So, and basically antibiotics and surgery can be the way to treatment today. But it's always best to get it early. And who knows, in 1928. I'm probably sure that didn't happen, but
I wouldn't know what they would have treated it with then. I don't know.
No, they tried surgery. So it did say that on May 21st.
That's right.
And so one of the places that I was reading, they said they might do, some sort of thesis maybe historically, but I don't even know if that's what they did. They just said he had surgery on 5/21. So whatever it was they did attempt to help him.
Yeah, but it just couldn't happen.
Yeah.
So this was June 1928 that he passed away from the bronchial pneumonia event. In September of 1928, at St. Mary's Hospital in London, Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin. So that discovery led to the introduction of antibiotics and greatly reduced the number of deaths from infection. But, antibiotics weren't widely used until the 1940s, but you just imagine if it had been available in 1928, how this young father with all his family, his growing family, life would have been different.
Right. And like timing, right? Timing is everything. And if he'd just been in the antibiotic era.
Right. Different era.
Right. So just imagine, if you will, a young Ruth Elizabeth, mother to 4 children under 4. She just lost her husband. So she had no family nearby. He had no family nearby. And she buried her husband in St. Francis Cemetery in Walpole, Mass. It's a lovely, elegant headstone that looks like it had room for the spouse's name. So did she intend on staying in Walpole maybe and adding her name with his? Or did officials assume she was going to stay? I don't know, but the stone was really pretty and it looked like it had room for more people. So I don't know those circumstances.
Yeah. So, one of the difficult things for her was that Ruth was not a citizen of the United States, but the children were. So how was she going to manage 4 children and pay for it and, and where, and with most women of the time, it would probably be important or necessary to remarry. So hard to know all the resources that she might have had, but it seemed as though her best choice was to head back to Canada, where there might be help to raise her children in familiar areas and with family. So according to recollections passed on by her son, Philip, they moved back in 1928. So they didn't wait long. She headed right back with her kids, where they lived in Beechwood and Holmesville in New Brunswick. And that's just across the border with the US near Presque Isle, Maine. Okay, so Ruth's sister, Irma, lived just across the border in Weston. And Ruth went on to remarry twice, first to Edward Kearney in 1929. There's not much known about him or that marriage, But at some point, they were no longer married, and then she married James Jackson, date unknown. But they were together in the latter half of the 30s and had a daughter, Marilyn Rose, born 8th of July, 1936. Ruth was now a beautiful mother to one son and 4 daughters. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
That's a bad question to ask, I was going to say.
If your heart couldn't break anymore for these children, when they lost their dad, they're now about to lose their mom. So Ruth was under the care of her doctor from July 1st, 1936. And then she gave birth July 8th to Marilyn. But during this time, she was diagnosed with measles and bronchopneumonia, which on July 21st, 1936, brought about the immediate cause of her death, which was acute phthisis, which means tuberculosis. How sick, I can't imagine those weeks, how sick she must have been. So she was, sick enough that the doctor was treating her, but then she gave birth and then it got worse. And all because of these contributing factors, which were measles, which is, I wasn't quite sure. Her immediate cause of death was acute phthisis, which means tuberculosis, but also they mentioned measles as well. So did she have them both, or was phthisis another way of saying measles? I don't know. All I know is there's a lot of stuff going on in there, and that's she has to be so sick. I just don't. And again, timing is everything. Now we have treatments for these things, and vaccinations and whatnot, but these things can be treated, but probably not then. There's nothing that they could do but to help her as best they could.
Right. So this is just another thing that we've come to describe as sad facts. Just the things that make you go, oh, and your heart aches for their suffering. And knowing now there's ways to prevent and treat these things, it just makes you wonder, what if Salvatore had been able to get penicillin? What if Ruth could have been treated for her pneumonia or vaccinated for measles when she was young? We can all lament how different life would be if timing had been better, but I think when it's your ancestor, it just hits you different, and you really think about it a lot more, I think.
Right. You can connect. You can connect to you know what measles are, you know what tuberculosis is, and mothers dying early in childbirth and things like that.
And you understand how hard the lives were of those who were still here and had to figure out how to go on without them.
Right. And that's just a big double whammy. So here's a thought. Next week we're going to talk about the Nicolai children. There's now some young children that don't have parents. So we'll discuss their mom and their dad. Just consider that their father was Italian, their mother was Canadian, and they were American. So, how to manage all that and get in the right place, and where you can be part of the community or the citizenship. They had they were American.
Right. So what do you do?
So one thing, this is just a little tidbit side note. When I investigated Italian citizenship, the 4 children, because of the time frame that they were born, and because of their father never did reach naturalization, they were considered Italian citizens, being born on foreign soil. So they could have been, they would have been dual citizens, I believe, and I could research it further, but there were some different changes in laws and things that, anyway, so those children also were Italian. So they were, but nobody would have known that probably at the time. And
right,
with the dad gone, and they didn't know their Italian family, how would they have known that? But for one thing's for sure, they were American, which is just, it puts a heavy twist on everything. So that's next week. That's where we're going to go, because there's some really great stories that happen to these children once they have lost their parents. They persevered. And let's talk about that perseverance and carry on with that topic next week. So until then, why not give us a shout? Look for us on social media. We're out there. And tell all your friends about the family history stories you're hearing here on Chasing Hazel's Tales. You can email us at chasinghazelstales@gmail.com. We hope you have a great week.
And hope everybody keeps their power, at least. at least those in Maine that are listening to us.
That's right. We hope you stay safe.
That's right. All right.
We'll see you next week.
All right.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.